Hello traders and welcome to today's market update. I'm Nick and we're going to be jumping into some of the major currency pairs as well as some other ones that I've seen some interesting setups on. Let's go ahead and jump into it right here with euro dollar, starting with the majors. Let's go ahead and take a look at what we see here happening on euro dollar. Now we do see prices drifting lower here as the lows recently have been broken through. You can see that if we kind of draw this structure here, you can see that this was acting as a level of support. We did break through that recently and seeing prices dip a little bit further. Now, what may happen is if we do start to see a little bit of a rally here on euro, we may actually find resistance at this level now because, support could become potential resistance here in this area. So if price does find its way back up there, maybe looking for some sort of short opportunity. We do see a green bar printing there right at the bottom there. If I zoom in just a little bit, you can see we are seeing kind of a little bit of a bullish reaction to this area here right around that 1.1128 area, kind of that general vicinity. We're seeing prices start to rally a little bit. We'll see if we can get a little bit more of a bounce there, but we might find kind of some confluence with that 50% retracement as well as that level of what was support now potentially becoming resistance. Let's take a look at pound dollar this morning as well, guys. Taking a look here on the 4-hour chart, what we see is we do see kind of the potential for an inverted head and shoulders. Now, if you don't know what a head and shoulders pattern is, I'll pull up the sketch pad, we'll take a look at this. So what a head and shoulders pattern is essentially is you kind of have something like this, right? You have a high, but then you have a higher high, and then you have a lower high. And a lot of times what happens is this structure kind of breaks down and we see prices start to reverse the trend. Now that's not gonna work every single time, but this is just a general concept here. And what we now see on pound dollar is actually the inverse. So picture this and flip it, and that's what we're starting to see potentially happening here on the pound. You can see here is our kind of lower low, and then we have a higher low. You can see this area here acting as kind of the two shoulders, our head down here, and we're seeing a higher low on the right here. Now what might happen here is if we start to break through this structure here, we might start to see a trend reversal. Just something to consider here on the pound going forward, just a potential pattern there that has a lot of power and could potentially lead us into kind of a reversal here on the pound. Just something to look for. If not, if we start to see prices roll over, we may head back down to retest recent lows. And if that happens, we may see some sort of a bounce as we did get a very nice rally off of it on the previous test. So that's pound dollar. Let's go ahead and take a look at USD JPY and let's see what we can find here on this particular chart. What we can see here that's interesting is if I pull this trend line, I did notice that you can see that what was a potential level of support, right? We found support, and then we broke through that level. We are currently testing it on the way back up. Now, many times what you're going to see when price is acting like this is that this level got rejected, right? So buyers were here, and here, buyers were not here and actually sold off price through this level. So sellers took over here and pushed price lower. Now on the retest, we may find some sort of bearish reaction to that level as bears were in control previously. So something to consider there on USD JPY as we do kind of have a series of lower highs here forming kind of a downtrend. We'll see what happens there overall. If we can get a continuation to the downside, we may see prices head back to this structure here and possibly even down to recent lows right around this area down here. Let's take a look at Brent crude. This is the next one we're going to look at. Oil here, taking a look at the 4-hour chart, what we see is that we do have kind of this longer term chart trend line here that price may want to come up to test. That's not out of the question. We may see prices start to retrace up to test this area ultimately to kind of in favor of that longer term trend line. We do see that price is breaking through this level here, which is significant, right? Because this was a significant level of support. Price found resistance on it when it broke through, but now we are currently breaking above. We'll see if that level can hold and if we can ultimately break higher to come back to test that trend line. WTI crude, this is also going to be kind of similar. We have this structure here. If I can kind of draw this line here, you can see that that's kind of a significant structure that was broken. So price may want to head back eventually to test that high. Also may want to, as you can see, we are finding some sort of support down here. Also may want to test those recent highs again. So if we get a bullish run on oil, we might find some sort of reaction there. Let's go ahead and jump into gold. So looking at gold here this morning, what we have is an interesting little concept here where we have kind of we had a ceiling, right? We had a multiple level rejection across this black line here that I've got identified, and you can see price did pop up above it, but we did consolidate back underneath temporarily. I'm currently testing that area right now. Now, if I back it up to the daily chart, we did talk about recently how we kind of had this kind of wedge formation forming on gold. You can see we did get that flag pattern, right? We got the big flag pull here. We got our flag concept here, and now we are currently breaking above. Now, what you can see is exactly what we talked about on Monday in one of our market updates, is we talked about the fact that price pulled back to this level and did find some sort of support. We found a bounce off of that level of right around 100 and something pips. We had a nice little movement there off of those lows. And what you can see is that price is now reacting bullishly to that area. What we want to potentially see is if price can come back to test those recent highs, that recent level of what was a significant resistance. Price likely wants to come back and test it. We'll see if that plays out. Again, there's no such thing as a guarantee in trading, but there's a good chance that we do see some sort of momentum push as price does reject, kind of going lower in this area. USD CAD is the next one we want to look at, guys. And what's interesting here with dollar Canadian is we do kind of have this ceiling here on this price. Now you can see price is kind of somewhat consolidating left to right here on the charts. If I just kind of identify these high and lows, you can see kind of in this area we have had a choppy market environment, currently testing the highs here, and potentially we see price come back down to potentially want to test those recent lows again, as price continues to chop around back and forth in this kind of sideways market environment that we do see in dollar Canadian. We're also going to take a look at GBP Canadian today in kind of sympathy. As price is similar here, we do see kind of a structural retest going on right now as price kind of chops back up to this area here, and is currently testing those recent highs, looking to see how this channel reacts. Again, channels can be up, down, or sideways, and currently we are seeing somewhat of a sideways channel happening on GBP Canadian. As price does come up into this region, the technicals are telling us we may see some sort of rejection, as we have seen in prior movements. You can see price consolidated multiple times here before ultimately rolling over. Price came back up to this area. We found rejection and sellers took control of that market there, and now we are currently testing that level again to see if we potentially could roll over here. If not, if price does decide to break through, we could potentially get in on a retracement or a pullback. You want to be adaptive, in my opinion, to the markets is a much better approach than trying to predict every single movement. So we could potentially adapt to a market movement higher. Just something to consider with GBP Canadian. GBP Aussie is the last one I do want to talk about today, and the reason that I like this one is we can see price is currently pulling back to a really nice little structural area. Now, if I also get my fibs, you can see that we have really two things lined up here, which make GBP Aussie a really interesting little setup here. You can see price is pulling back currently to a significant level of resistance in combination with a 618 point retracement, right? So we do have this area here as major significant level of resistance here in this market. What was support now potentially could become resistance. So as price rolls over and comes back into play here, we also see kind of an interesting hammer or pin bar there printing here on the chart. We'll see if that ultimately has some sort of push to the downside. So from here we have that 61.8, that resistance, as well as a potential pin bar reversal setup. So with that said, we might be potentially heading down to test recent lows. Just a concept there on GBP Aussie to consider. Guys, I hope you got something out of this market update, and we will see you next time.